Next, we're going to welcome up Eva Reed. Eva will share with us her career progression and how she has built her professional community, as well as present to us her views on the impact of gender in communications.
People come to me and ask me, they say, so Eva, what is it that you do? What does a senior analyst do? And I say, well, you know, I build data and I help people do their jobs better. What do you mean you help people do their jobs better? Well, it's about efficiency and it's about communication and it's about, no, but really, how do you help people do their jobs better? Well, when it comes down to it, really, what I do is I build communities. That's what I do. Yes, I build data sets. I work with the Metropolitan Police Department and I help them develop their crime data sets, and I help them develop data sets to identify why certain crimes are happening in certain areas. And I work with our Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, and I help them I do training for them, and I help them build their data sets, and really what I'm doing is I'm building community. So I'm going to talk a lot about community from a different perspective. We've been hearing the word community, community engagement, community resilience throughout the talks so far, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But how did I get here? Well, probably the best thing I've seen on social media in, 10 years was this. Now, I've modified it for my own purposes a little bit, so apologies to the original creator of this. But the reality is, this is what happened to me. There was not a point A to point B. There was a point A, point A1, point A2, et cetera, et cetera. I have been a map geek since I was, I'll say 5 years old. When I was 5, I had a best friend, a little boy from France named Gael, and we used to, instead of nap time, we would hide in the back. The teacher would be reading a story. We're all supposed to be lying on our little blankets. And we would be in the back with pieces of paper and pens, drawing imaginary places, and basically mapping out these imaginary places. A couple years later, I don't know if it was anything in particular, if there was any particular reason, but my uncle sent me a subscription to National Geographic magazine. And yes, the pictures were amazing, and yes, it was so exciting because it was my first real magazine. I always opened up the magazine, and if it was, I think we got them every other month. If it was a map month, I was in heaven. The first thing I did before I even read the magazine was pull the map out, spread it out on the floor, and just look at the map. And now I know what I was actually doing was reading the map and learning about places and gathering information and blah, blah, blah. But when I was 7, I just thought maps were the coolest thing ever. And oh my God, my uncle sent this to me. I just felt so amazing. Well, fast forward until I wasn't getting the subscription anymore. You get older, you have different interests. Things change. I kind of forgot about National Geographic. Not really, but you're on to other stuff. So fast forward to probably college, and I decided I'm going to be an environmental science major, and I'm going to change the world, and I'm going to understand why people pollute, and I'm going to understand why certain species exist, and I'm going to be amazing at environmental science. I took my first biology class, and it was horrible. I loved the topic. It was so interesting, but all the memorization, I thought I was going to die. I could not figure out for the life of me how I was going to make it through 4 years of this. What am I going to do? I can't memorize for the rest of the 4 years. So environmental science was not going to work out for me. Next up, anthropology. Wow, this is super cool. We're learning about people and communities and how people interact with each other, and oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And I wrote my first ethnography, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure this is for me. I'm not really sure why, it just didn't click with me. I did a really cool interview with a friend of mine who worked in the food service. He had work study in the food service, and I learned all this really cool stuff about what was happening in the kitchen, why you don't want to eat that kind of food, because, yeah. So all the things that you think you know about food service, not actually true, but I realized that ethnographies were not where it was for me. I just wasn't going to happen. I needed a natural science credit. Wasn't going to take biology. Loved physics, but the last time I'd taken physics was in my senior year in high school, and wasn't going to take physics. So I happened upon geography. There was a geography department in my school, one of the few geography departments in the country. I decided that I would take physical geography because, hey, it fulfills the natural science credit. Geography's interesting. That's like place names and stuff, right? Wow, so not place names. I learned all about plate tectonics and different kinds of water bodies and all this really cool stuff, and I still actually didn't do that well in the class. I passed with a B, but just barely. But oh my God, it was amazing. I had found my calling, if you want to say that. So geography was where I was, and then the next semester when they told me I could take cartography classes, I was in heaven. I took cartography, I took advanced cartography, they had a GIS class. I was like, sign me up for that. Computers and maps, this is where I'm supposed to be. And everyone always says, well, the rest is history, but the rest isn't history for me. The rest is making my way to where I am today. I have graduated with my degree in geography, political geography, in case you care, in case you know what that is. I was interested in why people fight wars, why do people move to places. I grew up in New York City, where if you walk into a neighborhood, you can see just by the buildings and the designs of the buildings, you can see what communities have lived there over time. That was so fascinating to me. I did my undergrad, moved to Phoenix, Arizona from St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm originally from New York. How did I end up in all these different places? I'm not even really sure. I worked for 5 years doing a lot of different stuff, totally not in my field, and then ended up with a master's degree in public administration. I totally fell into it. Started out with my master's degree in geography, decided that I really had no interest in the type of geography they were doing in that department, so I took some time off, came back, had to take a class in the public administration department, and again, oh my God, this is so amazing. My focus was intergovernmental relations. How do people talk to each other? How do we work together? How do we make this happen? So that's where I ended up. I have now worked in academia. I have worked in all levels of government. I've worked in the private sector. Decided at some point, apparently when I was in my master's degree, that I wanted to work in the public sector. I wanted to do public administration because I wanted to have an effect on my community. I wanted to do something that would support my community. I wanted to be engaged with my community. So for the past 10, almost 11 years, I've been working for the District of Columbia as, technically, my title is Information Technology Specialist, which really doesn't tell you anything because all 333 people in my agency basically have the same title. What I do is a lot of training. I teach people how to use GIS. I teach them how to bring it into their particular field. So I have everybody from environmental scientists to police officers to police analysts to homeland security experts coming through my classes. I teach them all the same thing, but obviously with a little bit of a different flair. As I'm doing all of this, I'm also teaching at Northern Virginia Community College, and I'm realizing that I have another opportunity for community here. I was telling the folks on the panel earlier, I was teaching a class, and a student, a female student, came into my class. She needed to make up a class. She was in a different section and had missed a class, so she asked if she could come into my class, and of course, no problem. We're teaching essentially the same things. She came up to me after class and said, you know, I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. There's no one here that looks like me. And I literally, even now, as I'm telling you this, my heart just clenches because that could have been me. I didn't even know. I was just kind of doing my thing and just moving on in the world. And I realized that, you know what? I'd had that same experience. I just didn't really notice it. And I had women all around me as teachers, so the fact that there were not other students like me, whatever. She was going to leave the program. And I said, please don't leave. Come talk to me. Let's get together. Let's get a group together and start talking with the other women in the department, which there were very few. Strangely, again, most of the teachers, most of the professors were women, but not the students. So we got a group together and started meeting on a regular basis at Northern Virginia Community College. We ended up doing Maker Faire. I don't know if everyone knows about Maker Faire, where you go and you make lots of really cool stuff. It might be technology, it might not. We did Maker Faire for 4 years together as a group. I co-founded with some other women. I guess I'm the lead, but I co-founded DC area Women in GIS. Women from all over the DC metro area come together on a not so regular basis, mostly because life is chaotic and busy, but we get together periodically. We try to make an effort to meet at conferences. We meet for breakfast. We build community. I don't say I build community. I'm a facilitator, really, but we build community. We get together, we talk about the issues that are happening in our community, both as women and as GIS professionals, and just people trying to do good in the world. I had another instance where I was at work and DC government doing whatever it was that I was doing, and I had someone come up to me and said, you know what, I'm afraid to take time off to take care of my family. What do you mean you're afraid to take time off? You have leave, you can take leave, and you should just put in for leave. And she said, no, I'm afraid to take time off. I'm the only woman on my team, and I'm afraid if I take time off, I'm gonna look like I'm not doing my job. That's a problem. We have things in place that allow us to take time off and to take care of our families. We have sick leave, we have annual leave, we have all these things. But if you don't feel comfortable on your team enough to say, I need to take time off, that's a problem. So I started talking to other people and said, you know, is this an issue? Because I don't have kids, so for me it's kind of like if I'm sick, whatever. But I started talking to people and they said, you know, we're having the same issues. I'm taking, me personally, Eva, I have an elderly mother. I have family members who've gotten sick. I'm an only child, so the responsibility is on me. If I have to take time off to take care of my family, I want to know I can do it and not have to worry about it. For a long time, I was the only woman on a team of 20 people. That was a really hard place to be, and that's kind of when I started to realize that, yeah, this is an issue. I was asked to talk about my career progression, and I'm going to get back to the women in community in a minute, but this is something I've been working on for a while, trying to figure out how to explain this to people, how it works. Like, yes, you start as an analyst and you move up in your career, and then you become a project manager or a program manager, and you start managing people, and you start, doing all the things that you're supposed to do. And what I realized is that as you're doing this, you're doing other things too that you're not necessarily getting paid for, but you're kind of doing as part of your community. So I was realizing as I'm talking to women and I'm saying, hey, but you should really take the time off because you need to take the time off because you have a family or whatever it is, wherever you're taking the time, it doesn't matter. I I guess I'm now kind of a mentor. And I'm not sure how that happened. I didn't plan on it. I didn't say, I'm going to take lessons in how to become a mentor, but here we are. I'm encouraging other women, so here's where we are. So I haven't really figured out this whole graphic yet. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm a map maker. There's a difference. So you'll forgive me for not having maybe the best slides ever, but this is kind of the idea. And then I had this other idea, and I'll be interested after the session to hear your thoughts on this. It's not really just you become a mentor and then everything changes. You're constantly being a mentor and a mentee, and I feel like it's a cycle and it's constantly changing, and you're being a mentor for different things, and then you're being a mentee because you've moved into some. I'm not a project. I didn't go to school for project management. I look to my colleagues who are project managers, and I learn from them. So anyway, so this is constantly happening, and as I'm doing all of this, I'm realizing that we're building communities. We're constantly building communities. And this has been, for the last, officially, for the last year or so, has been my real focus. Yes, I'm continuing to do my job, I'm continuing to excel at my job, but my focus right now is building communities. Building communities around the topics that I work in. So I'm building GIS communities. Someone asked me to start a user group for R, which is, if you know, it's a statistical language. I don't know R. What am I doing? Well, okay, I'll start a group for it, and you guys can join, and you guys can teach me about R, and I'll facilitate, and it will be fine. I'm building a community. I'm not necessarily the expert. I don't have to be the expert. I'm providing an opportunity for other people to be the expert, and hopefully I'll learn something along the way. This is really important, and again, you've heard this through all of the other talks, the other conversations today, that community is key. Community engagement, community resilience, it's so important. That feeling like you belong is critical to doing what we do. To be able to go to someone and say, you know what, I'm not really understanding this thing that we're doing in, insert your field here. Can you talk me through what it is that you would do, or how I should maybe think about going about this? We don't always have to be the expert. We have to be open, we have to be willing to listen to people, and we have to be willing to ask questions. So I feel like my building community, it does it for me. Hopefully it does it for you as part of my community. I said we were going to get back to women, and my whole talk has kind of been about women, but one of the parts of this building community piece, visibility, like I said, I was the only woman on a team of 20 people. I knew there were other women in my agency, but I didn't work with them, and I didn't see them because we were in a different office. And so one of the first things I did when I realized that this was a problem was go out and try to meet other women in the IT department. Hey, what do you do? Well, I am a business analyst and I do this. Hey, what do you do? Well, I'm a financial analyst and this is what I do. Or I'm on the networking team or whatever. So building visibility is really critical. I've already talked a little bit about engagement, just getting out there, providing opportunities for people, but also getting people to communicate with each other. And then retention. The number of times that I have heard someone say, I don't feel like I belong here, I'm leaving. It's really sad, especially if you're a really important part of the community. If you're an important part of the team and you're leaving because you don't feel like you belong, what is wrong? What have we not done? This is a problem for everyone, but it is particularly a problem for women in IT, in Homeland Security, in almost every field, particularly in fields where men have traditionally been dominant. We really need to build personal networks. This is critical to building community. We don't do this enough. We need to do in-person, we need to do virtual, we need to do whatever it takes to get to talk to people and talk about our experiences and talk about what's not working and what is working. Traditionally, women talk about the process. We talk about the whole process. We talk the entire time during the process. Men are focused traditionally on decisions. What was the decisions? They're not talking about the whole process. They went through the process, but they're not talking about the process. So we need to find ways to communicate with each other to kind of find a middle place, talking about process and the decision, and knowing that just because we're talking about the process or just because we're talking about the decision doesn't mean that we haven't done both pieces of it. Really important. Women tend to be networkers, which is great for us, built in, yay. Men traditionally tend to take command and don't do that networking this way. We need to do both. Women need to learn to take command more. Men need to learn to do more networking. We need, again, to find ways to meet in the middle. We need to change our expectations, not change them completely, but change them enough that we're trying to understand what the other is saying and what the other is trying to communicate. So I could talk about this for hours. I'm not going to because we don't have hours. I could talk about this for hours. I love talking about it. I talk about it all the time on social media. I ask questions, and I love it when people answer. And there's a reason that I mention that in particular. Please find me on LinkedIn. Please find me on Twitter. My latest question on Twitter is, are you a woman in STEM that did not come from a STEM degree, that did not take a degree in STEM? I keep waking up and I have like 20 comments to that, which I'm kind of surprised about. I talk on Twitter and like no one listens, and it's totally fine. I'm just doing it for myself, but it really struck a nerve with people, and I was like, wow, okay. So I would love to chat with you if it's on social media, if it's wherever. I build community. That's what I do. I love to do it. I hope this is another one of my communities. Thank you.